Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Office Hours. Today, we're going to be talking about Vault. Very exciting here. And it's going to be a really interesting one today. I'm really particularly excited about this. I say it's feature. I don't know. It's something near and dear, very close to me. But as usual, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, feedback, please post them in chat. We'd love to hear from you. As you do, please be considerate, be welcoming, and be professional. If you have any questions about our community guidelines, I'm going to post a link to them on screen. Go to hashicorp.com/community-guidelines to see more. With that, I think we should get started. Chris, would you care to introduce yourself to the stream?
Sure. My name is Christopher Swinson, pronouns he, him. I am an engineer on the Vault ecosystem team. So I've been here for about a year now and working on various parts of the plugin and new event system for the most part for the past year. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I guess we'll start with one question. Like, why do we have a Vault event system? Like, what happened? Why did we start to think about putting one together?
Sure. We've been thinking about it for a really long time. It's just mostly a matter of agreeing on a set of features that we should launch and work with, and then getting the work done and out there. So what we have now is it's there to solve several use cases. But a lot of people really want to be able to do things like subscribe to notifications whenever events change, or sorry, whenever secrets change, or maybe like when one expires, or maybe they want to be notified if, like someone changes a role in, an auth method or something like that. So, pretty much the sky's the limit on the sorts of things that Vault could have events for. And so we started building this to see, how that would work out and to get feedback from the community. We can start working on building out all those use cases. We started with the only events built into Vault right now are in the KV event system, in the KV secrets engine. Sorry. It's very early for me, so apologies
okay.
if I mix up a few words.
Yeah, awesome. I guess one of the other questions that I have is that with events, is this something that is going to be permanent? Is this a feature that we're going to continue building out? Where is it in terms of if someone were to use it today, what should we be aware of?
Yeah, certainly. It's currently an experiment. So experiments are a new concept in Vault where it's not guaranteed going forward. Like we don't want to make a promise that we're going to support this forever. But it's certainly something that's very interesting to me and that I intend to keep working on if possible. It of course depends on the priorities of the entire Vault team on whether or not we continue this or if we change it radically or do something entirely different based on feedback and whatnot. So there's we can't make promises, but it is in Vault 1.13 as an alpha, basically alpha quality thing. So it's mostly there for feedback. It's not necessarily meant to be relied on in production yet. So it's in development.
Awesome. Good. Okay. Yeah. So I just want to make it clear as of time of this recording, it is experimental. So keep in mind as you use it. But we are interested in hearing about how you would like to use it. So if you have use cases, how users would like to consume events, right? So if you have particular consumer model in mind, event types that you want to see implemented, and what kind of ACLs and granularity you'd like to be able to specify. I'll be sure to follow up a link in this below this video with a feedback topic on our forum. The feedback topic will contain some information that will be helpful for us to understand what you're going to do with the event system and what you'd like to do. With that, well, let's get to the demo. We're all here for the code, right?
Yeah, I certainly am. I'm a very demo heavy developer, so I'm ready when you are.
Okay, we like that.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and enable events. So we went ahead and left them disabled by default and left them under this experiment flag, specifically because we don't know for sure, what kind of performance impact, like if you had a lot of events or a lot of subscribers, what that could have on a system. And so we didn't want to like necessarily enable it by default and have adverse impact on our current customers who don't care about events at all, right? So it is an opt-in sort of thing. So and the way you opt in is with -experiment events.alpha1. And this is, just in case we need to change and have a different experiment later on for events alpha 2 or beta or something. So and then the rest is just the standard kind of Vault stanza. I'm going to start up a development server so that I don't have to specify storage and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and boot that up. So my Vault server unsealed and everything successfully. If we cared about looking into this, we can see here that the experiments did recognize that we have the events enabled. And somewhere in here, we would have it successfully starting the event system. If I could, I don't know if I could find it in there, but won't worry about that. Okay, so what do we want to do with events now? If you look at that documentation page, there's a bunch of KV events that we can subscribe to. So I want to go ahead and do that. And I'll just do it just a basic sort of command line style. So events subscribe. Oops. I've been testing out some stuff here. So KV. So I want to subscribe to all KV v2 data write events. Basically, anytime data is written to KV, I want to know about it. Basically, so Vault has a built-in event subscribe sort of command that will just basically stream any events now that are coming in from Vault from KVV2. You also can subscribe directly to, this is exposed as a WebSocket via the Vault API. So you can subscribe directly if you want, but this is sort of useful for demoing and for building out proof of concepts. And then I was going to go ahead and just to prove that this is sort of working here. So let me go ahead and put a secret there. Oops. I always forget to do that sometimes when I'm doing demos. Okay, so that was just I specified HTTPS earlier instead of HTTP when I was testing. So I went ahead and did a put here, and then you can see that in my separate window here, subscription came through with an event. This is following a standard format called cloud events. But basically, it says we had a data write event come in. We had it come in. It was via a plugin. So in this case, the standard secret plugin that's a KVV2 plugin. And then there's a little bit of metadata about versioning and the data path that was written. The actual data itself, it's critical to say, is not included here. So there is an ACL, like a policy that you can use to control access to these, but it's not 100% built out like with all of the bells and whistles we'll want. This is one of the reasons why this is an alpha, by the way. So we're not actually sharing the secrets themselves on the event system, just a new version was written. Here's the path, here's the plugin that it was written on and whatnot. This way, if we do want to introduce that in the future, we might have a more detailed policy about this. So I wanted to go ahead and, okay, so that's neat that we can kind of see that this happened here, but can we also integrate it with other things? Like being able to just see a stream of JSON is pretty cool, but I wanted to go ahead and show how you could use something like SQS, like AWS's simple queuing system, in order to do this. So I wrote a quick little script. This is basically just copying their demo of in Python of hooking up to SQS. I want to hook up to an event queue. So basically, I created an event testing queue, and then I'm going to listen on it for events and print them out. So that's all this is doing, is just printing events from SQS. So I'll go ahead and start that up. Listening on SQS queue. All right, great. And then let's go ahead and hook up the subscriber. So Vault events subscribe KVV2. I think I had that in quotes. No, I was testing, so I can do it here. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to subscribe to all KVV2 events. I just went ahead and just a blanket subscription. And then I'm going to output them to SQS send. Actually, I'll show you what SQS send is. Just show there's nothing up my sleeves. SQS send, it's almost a mirror of that other script. Creates the queue, and then all it does is it reads from standard input and then pipes anything it gets to SQS. So nothing too fancy. Okay, so let's restart that. Okay, so we have Vault event subscribe, SQS send, and then this is over here on the right-hand side receiving them. So let's go ahead and do another KV put. So let's call something equals something else. So just kind of something else to show up here. And you can see that indeed that did get all the way routed through SQS. So it kind of went back through here through this subscription. Then this got piped to my SQS send script, which took all the data that it received. And then that made its way through SQS back to my other Python script that's listening on that SQS queue. And hopefully, if I hit the button again on yep, I got another event. So it continues to keep working in the background now. So that's sort of, I think, the basics on how these events work and how you could use them. Even with what we have now, we tried to build it in a pretty flexible way so that you could compose it and use it with something like SQS. Or Kafka or whatnot. We do hope to build further better integrations like built in, or at least through like maybe plugins of some sort, but we haven't landed on exactly what that looks like yet. So that's why this command line tool works. I also had one more thing I could demo, if that helps. Do you have any questions, Rosemary? Or I don't think
Yeah.
I've seen any questions yet about this.
We have a couple questions. And so we'll start with this one here. Can we add client IP address or HMAC of token? So I guess this is in some of the fields in the event.
So off the top of my head, I would have to say I would be really hesitant about client IP addresses because they could be kind of sensitive. Like that might fall under GDPR regulations and things like that. Like IP addresses, you have to be really careful about logging those. And I'm always just hesitant to throw those in there without a lot of careful thought. HMAC of the secret is potentially possible. That's definitely a good piece of feedback that we'll keep. Our goal was that we have the sort of the version, which isn't the HMAC, of course, but it lets you at least know, like, I had this previous version, here's a new version. But it doesn't let you know anything about the contents. The HMAC would just be basically a hashed message authentication code about the content, so it would change with the contents.
Got it. Awesome. We have another question. How about if the subscription service runs when already some events are published? So I guess if there were previously secret changes and the subscription service needs information about that, how do you suggest someone would handle it?
Yeah, so that's good to talk about because that gets into a couple of the limitations. Currently, if there were other events already on the queue prior, or like that had happened before my subscription, they would not get replayed. So that's a thing we call event replay. It's a thing we've certainly thought about, but we want to be careful that we're not storing a bunch of events, which could. We felt that it would probably be more confusing than helpful if when you subscribe to an event stream, you just got a bunch of like old events automatically. So for now, we don't include that feature. It is something that we have considered and would continue considering if that's a thing that people would be very interested in. But currently, yeah, if I just like killed this and then resubscribed, I don't get any new events. Or actually, I should say, I don't get any of the old events like replayed through or anything. Yeah, so that brings up another limitation I wanted to say. So yeah, we don't replay old events, and we also don't guarantee delivery, and that's kind of it's in a similar sort of vein. So some systems like Kafka can be configured to have stronger consistency, or really guaranteed delivery, like I will guarantee that I will deliver this to my subscribers, or an error will happen somewhere that the producer can see. And we don't provide those guarantees at the moment, mostly because we didn't want to reinvent Kafka in the middle of Vault, right? So we sort of went with a best effort system for now. Um, and so part of the best effort promises are that, it's going to try, if it's going to try everything it can to send those events to the subscriber. But if the subscriber doesn't receive them, can't receive them, if it, like, you hit Control C or whatever, that's not going to throw an error on the sending side for sure. It's not going to block anything further upstream from happening. So mostly it's a trade-off between um, uh, performance and consistency, I would say. And we're currently leaning more towards performance than strong consistency and strong delivery guarantees at the moment. Again, this is something else we're looking for feedback on, but yeah.
To as a segue into that, if anybody out there has a specific use case in which this perhaps consistency is more important, please put it in the chat. We're looking for information about what you would be using this system for and what kind of events are important to you, right? So if you do have a need for consistency, then let us know what that is. Speaking of use cases, Christopher, are there any use cases that you can think of that this might apply to, right? If it's not just the KV events, are there other reasons for us to be subscribing to certain events of Vault?
Yeah. So you could certainly subscribe for security events, for instance, are pretty useful. Like anytime, again, like a path role changes, or like a role in your authentication method changes. In fact, I have a quick demo I was going to talk about with that really fast, to sort of get into that. So just as an example, this isn't in Vault, but it's just something I wrote really quickly just to demonstrate, like, if you had a Vault plugin and you wanted to add an event to it, it's something as simple as basically calling the send event method. And so I've updated, here we go, the built-in AppRole path role, so that I wanted to get notifications when any role is created or updated, essentially. So if you had your own plugin, you could certainly, or a community plugin you wanted to modify to add events to it. It's something as simple as this. Basically, this is all just building out the data structure for, I want to send an event that has some metadata, and the metadata looks like, here's my role, maybe here's my TTL or something like that. And then I send that event. So just to kind of show this, it's already built into here. So I can do another event subscribe. There we go. So I added in, I think this was if AppRole create update. So I wanted to just subscribe to those. And then now, yeah. So this is still receiving, actually. I didn't actually modify the SQS receive. Now I should have an AppRole script, just because I always forget how to type in everything, that basically just goes in and does an auth enable AppRole and then writes a role into it, so that it basically setting up AppRole authentication. And then it writes some stuff in case I'm writing another script. So if I run
I'm
this,
impressed if anybody remembers how to how to do the whole like path with the AppRole.
yeah, no, this is what I just have, like I just have tons and tons of these scripts laying around for anytime I'm doing some experiments on something. Because yeah, who remembers every single parameter that you might want to set up in some of these? There's just so many different auth methods and whatnot that it can be difficult to remember. But so when I wrote this now, so it enabled that AppRole auth method and then added a role, and then I got a message on my SQS queue that indeed I got an AppRole create update. The plugin was the auth AppRole plugin at AppRole. And the data was, or the metadata specifically was, this is the role name, and here's the TTL that I had added earlier. So anything else I would have added in would have shown up here. But the only things we have, according to the docs, is the KVV1 and KVV2 events are generated. Cool. I think I saw another question or two in chat.
Yep, there are plenty of questions, lots of interest here. So just to rehash some things, but if you have a question in chat, please drop it in there. We're going to answer them live, and we'll also be able to answer them. We have folks answering in chat in line, so if you miss it, you can always replay it. What protocol is used for notifications? Can it be configured with something like SMTP?
Yeah, so the protocol is WebSockets. So it's just a simple WebSocket stream. Anytime I do Vault events, subscribe here. Yeah. So this basically is just output over WebSockets. So as a stream of messages. So basically, that's all. And I think I have some examples in the docs of using something like WSCat, which is a WebSocket sort of curl kind of command. Yeah, and sorry, I was just getting distracted by another question. But yeah, so we only support WebSockets currently. It is something we're considering adding other protocols to. In particular, we know people are interested in things like SQS and Kafka. I hadn't heard SMTP. That would be challenging to support, but if it's something that people really want, we could certainly consider it. But yeah, WebSockets for now.
Yeah. And if you have feedback for those who are asking these questions and really really want to talk about how to extend the system, we do have a forum thread posted up. So just drop it in there. That's how we're tracking feedback. So let us know your use cases, what protocol, if you're interested in something specific, let us know, as well as some of the things that you might be looking to do with it. There's a couple more questions. So someone asked, are there plans for path prefix and or specific mount filtering? And I think the concern here was that subscribing to all KVV2 / wildcard events on a large cluster could be pretty noisy.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something we're definitely thinking about. I don't think we have a promise as far as timeline on this, but it's something we've certainly talked about, and is a pretty critical feature. We just didn't have it quite worked out, I think, in time for the alpha uh, to get just all the pieces lined up for that to work well and work with our existing policies. So it's mostly a matter of how do we specify this in terms of both how do you subscribe to those, and then also how do you allow subscriptions to those via policy. So I think once we've ironed out those details, we'll get some more specifics on how you can do that sort of thing. But it's certainly something that's on our mind. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so interesting comment here. I think if Kafka, then Nats also, or a way to make this plugin based so the community could provide plugins for Nats or RabbitMQ. I guess a bigger question is that will this be something that will this support sort of a plugin ecosystem similar to the way that a number of the HashiCorp tools support a plugin ecosystem, so community can contribute back?
I hope so. So yeah, like we only support WebSockets for now, and the reason was just so they could be so composable, like I showed, earlier. You could just pipe it to SQS. Obviously, that's not robust. And yeah, I think the right solution is probably something like a plugin system. Again, this is something we're still in progress as far as working out the details on how that makes sense. Is it a plugin system like we currently have, or is it something else? And is it something that people can easily load in third-party plugins like we allow? So we're still ironing out all of those details on what that looks like. But yeah, certainly, I think being able to use something like Nats or RabbitMQ, I think those are pretty critical abilities for the system. So we definitely want to be able to enable those, but we don't have specifics that we can say right now on what that solution will look like. But it is something, yeah, very near and dear to my heart.
Awesome. Okay, so we have an interesting question here, but it is experimental. But how does events work in the case of performance clusters, or let's say the Vault HA sort of model?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly where we landed on this. There was a lot of discussion about how they interact. I believe they are not currently replicated to performance replicas. or secondaries and things like that. I think I don't know if we've figured out exactly how we're going to do that, but I think we will define exactly how they interact by the time they get to the next phase. I think with how how performance replicas or DR you know clusters map into all this and what yeah all those sorts of details are that's sort of why this is an alpha. We haven't quite done that yet, so I think you would have to if you had other replicas or secondaries, you'd have to subscribe on those as well at the moment.
Yeah.
But so it's mostly just we're a little concerned about performance, right? So if we started clogging all the replication traffic with a bunch of events that nobody was subscribing to, that would obviously be suboptimal. So we didn't want to start doing that immediately. We wanted to do it after some kind of careful thought.
Awesome. Okay. And there's I guess everybody's kind of asking what's the timeline for more robust implementation of the feature? And blank, we don't really know. I mean, part of this is there even interest? Clearly there is interest. But we're looking for more feedback on what is going to be more interesting to you, what's going to make this system more useful. So definitely let us know. Again, I'll post up the feedback link in the there we go, feedback link. But if you do have questions or you have comments, let us know in terms of the more robust implementation. It sort of just depends on what kind of feedback we get and the interest level.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. I certainly hope to keep working on this. If there's enough community interest and whatnot, then I think we can make it happen. But yeah, again, we can't make promises right now.
Yeah. I have my own question.
Yeah, of course.
I guess, is there a way that we could customize the fields that are eventually like customize some of the fields that are coming up? I know that right now that we have a schema that we're outputting, but I'd specifically like to know for dynamic secrets, for example, when it's going to expire, when that lease is going to be expiring. So is there a possibility that we'll be able to customize or figure out which fields we would like to see?
There isn't a way to do that right now. It's certainly I could envision that we could have like a metadata filter syntax or something like that, where I think by default we'll probably send all the metadata we have that isn't sensitive over the event. For there's just not a lot for KV in general because KV
Yeah.
doesn't have things like expirations and stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, so basically we only have old version, and path. But certainly if it's a dynamic secret, we'll probably send the TTL and then yeah, if that's something people want, the ability to like filter out metadata so that they can, if there's a ton, for instance, or they only care about one specific field, that could be requested. That would be an interesting feature. It is not something that I currently like have played around with though.
Got it. And I know I'm trying to remember. I think the boundary event system is open telemetry form is an open telemetry format. I think. Is there a specific format for the Vault one, or it's for the most part just one that we've organized around the information coming out of Vault?
I think we reuse some of the code from the Boundary team in building this event system, and I think we use the cloud events
Mhm. Oh yeah, there you
format.
go.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a standard format that is supported by the same underlying libraries that we
Hmm.
all use.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just we basically just picked one that made sense. This seemed to be the logical choice for at least for the JSON format that's used in the WebSockets. Um, but that's again something that could be potentially flexible depending on uh, interest and where that flexibility would be wanted.
Nice. I guess one question that's like, I would be curious if we use this for something like Kubernetes, right? So beyond Kafka and anything else, right? But there's a lot of reasons to do something like events, right? To read events, right? Where maybe you've got some custom resource in Kubernetes and you want to read some information um, about a secret changing or something. So I think there's a lot of interesting use cases that we can explore in this outside of messaging. I guess messaging. Sorry, I haven't had enough coffee today, but outside of messaging systems and the like. Is there anything else?
I was going to say, just, yeah, that's exactly the sort of use case we've been thinking of, is whenever people build these systems where, they have to poll for secrets being changed or something over time. This is exactly the sort of thing we want to replace it with, so that they can have a more proactive subscription that just tells them about these sorts of things. Um, yeah, there are some questions about guaranteed delivery. Like if you have a very sensitive system that absolutely 100% needs to know when a secret changes, right? Then you don't want this sort of best effort system necessarily. So you would still want to have a backup polling system. But we're hoping that a lot of those use cases could be solved with something like subscribing to an event. So that way you get notified and that you can know to restart your application, or re-render a template or whatever it is you need to do.
Yeah. I will say, speaking of Kubernetes, the operator is available right now. So in beta. So if you haven't tried it already, give it a try. But the Vault operator will refresh for secrets as well. I don't think it is using the event system here.
It is not.
It's
Yeah.
not. Yeah. But it is I think it's a very interesting use case, right? So if you did want to do a batch refresh of your secrets for some reason, not refresh of applications related to a secret, it might be more interesting to think about it from using the event system instead of just the operator, because the operator is sort of a one-to-one mapping between the secret and the application. But if you have multiple applications consuming the same secret, or you have you have to control the way you're rolling out or refreshing the application, then maybe, the event system is probably a better approach. I don't know. Just thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from chat? I'm going to make a last call for questions. Anything else that you would like to show us, Christopher?
No, I think that was all the pieces I had.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Someone said there is a secret operator from. Yes. Let me post a link in chat to the operator. 1 second. I'll post for those who are interested in that. Bit of a tangent, but.
Oh no, it's super important. I think we only released it like last week, so it's
Yeah.
super fresh off the presses.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. We have another question. Speaking of last call.
Cool.
I'm not sure. May need more clarity on this one, but how is the elections process done?
You mean in sort of like electing a leader in a cluster? This is not my area specifically, but I believe we use a standard Raft leader election. So Raft is a consensus protocol that's sort of at the core of a lot of the way our systems work. So I think it just uses a Raft leader election, but don't quote me on that, because I haven't actually dug into how we do leader elections in Vault.
Yeah, it is Raft. But I think that there's also a previous question about performance, about the performance clusters.
Yeah, which we don't have a great answer to yet.
Yeah.
It is something we're thinking about, and we will have an answer for by the time, if this gets to production quality, I'd say.
Yeah. So there was a previous question about how this is relevant for DR and the way Vault Enterprise does DR and high availability. So you can replay that section. But basically, if you have any opinions on how you would like to have the events be streamed across multiple clusters, let us know. We're still working on that. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to wait for a minute.
All right.
Christopher, it's in the background, so I'm going to just ask, what is that behind you? What are all those blinking lights behind you?
There's so many blinking lights. No, so those are all computer replicas from the 70s. So it's an Altair. The really bright one is an Altair 8800 replica. The slightly less bright one is a PDP-8, I think. There's a PDP-11 sort of hidden, and then a non-working MSI 8080A, I believe, that I broke when I was putting it together. So I'm still in the process of fixing that one. So I like making blinking light kits.
Nice. Oh, okay. We have another question here. Is there Terraform involved in this configuration or setup?
There is not. I don't think we have added support for the Terraform Vault provider yet into this. It's something that's something our team also typically works on. So it is something we're definitely going to keep in mind. Um, but yeah, I don't believe we have resources added to or data sources set up in Terraform yet for this.
Yeah, and I guess it wouldn't, in general, for experimental something experimental features like this, it wouldn't necessarily be exposed through the Terraform provider, right?
Yeah, I could see some cool things where you could do like if I were designing this and I got everything I wanted, you could certainly boot up like in your Terraform provider for Vault. Say I want to have this subscription set up, and I want it mapped to SQS, and this SQS queue maybe was also created via Terraform. So like I could see where like that would work really well. Like I could basically set up these subscriptions. Um, yeah, if that's something that it would support, but it doesn't. Let me make that very clear. It doesn't. But that would be that could see how that could be really cool if it would.
Yeah, it's a neat workflow because you would be setting up the event stream, right, with whatever target you're looking to set up as well. So
Exactly. It would make a lot of sense to be able to set up subscriptions with Terraform. I
yeah.
think.
Mhm. And just to rehash on the experimental part, how do we turn on that flag?
It was I showed at the very beginning, but there's
Yeah,
and it's I think it's right at the start of the docs.
yeah.
It's a dash experiment flag, so you use dash experiment, and I think it's events.alpha1, and
Okay.
that will turn it on for your Vault system. I think the command line always has it available because if you just don't use it if you don't need it, but the server will only enable it if you specify that experiment flag.
Okay. And it's also in the configuration as well, right? If you were
Yes.
to update that in your Vault server configuration.
Yeah, I believe that is correct. I don't know if we have an example of that, but
Okay.
oh yeah, it's we link to where it is.
Yeah.
It's also there's an environment variable. I forgot about that as well. You could also set it via environment variable.
Nice. Okay. I'll drop that as well. Drop a link to that specifically in there. So you can flag that in your Vault server, or you can pass it through command line, or you can pass it even through an environment variable. So you can choose.
Yep.
There's lots of questions. Goodness. Let's see. Do you have okay, so we have a question that I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer here fully, but we'll see if we can try. Do you have any sequence diagrams on onboarding an end user or team from logging to IDP and Vault to submit a waypoint job and view execution on Nomad, as well as the ACLs or tokens that are required? That's an interesting one.
I have to say
Um,
I do not know the details on how I would do that. I'd have to spend some time researching that.
yeah. I don't think we have any sequence diagrams on that. And I also don't think we have an end-to-end documentation on the ACLs and tokens that are required. If you can at least clarify a bit on logging to IDP Vault to submit a waypoint job. Is it using Vault as an identity provider? That is
That's
possible to do.
yeah, that's what I assumed that part meant, but
Yeah. I think that's where logging into IDP Vault. So that I don't think we have any information on. I'll take a note of it and we can see if there's a specific workflow available and I'll ask around. But we do not have, yeah, LDAP. Oh, LDAP plus Vault. Okay. LDAP plus Vault. Yeah, so we do not have a workflow for that. I'll certainly ask around and see if there's a possibility, but there isn't any documentation that I know of that has ACL's tokens required end to end.
yeah, I've not seen a tutorial or anything on that. That would be a neat tutorial, but
It would be, yeah. Actually, speaking of ACLs, does the event system, I guess, is that part of the Vault ACL system? Like, do you have to set specific paths and with the same actions, right, to read from it?
yeah, at the near the bottom, I think of the events page that we've linked to, it has the ACLs that are required for it to run. Basically, um, there's a single endpoint right now, sys event subscribe, that would have to be in your cluster that you basically would want to subscribe to. And you need to have read capability. So we're actually piggybacking on the existing ACLs uh, for doing any kind of HTTP GET. So that's a benefit of using WebSockets. Is WebSockets just operate like a normal HTTP request, so it still goes through all of the same Vault like authorization like machinery that we use for everything else in Vault. So it looks like a standard Vault API request to Vault, and so it's authenticated in the same way. And so hence you need to have a policy. It gives you read capability on the sys event subscribe slash the event type. I think so. There's an example and more details in the documentation. But yeah, it looks like a standard read request to one particular endpoint. This is something we definitely want to expand upon in the future, I think, because that is something, especially if we ever think about putting secrets themselves into the events, we'll need to have like a more robust, I think, ECL policy system.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on principle, you probably want a separate user service account retrieving that information. You don't want to be using one that's piggybacking off existing Vault policies and Vault users.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, you can have any, like the events themselves are not super sensitive, so that's why they can just be subscribed to with this simple policy, but you still need to have your existing policies to read the secret. Right. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. At that, I'm going to close out this community office hours. I think we've gotten a lot of questions. And thank you, Christopher, for answering them all. And thank you for those the engineers who are in chat who are monitoring and also answering them in line. If you have feedback on Vault Events, please let us know. We have a forum topic open. We'll be checking that for any use cases or any interest that that you might have on whether it be protocol, how you want to interact with it, trade-offs, concerns that you might have. We had some really fantastic questions about how it would work, at least across DR. We had some questions as well about filtering. So if you have any more specific questions, let us know. And if you want to try it out for yourself, we have documentation on the event system. Turn it on under the experimental features, and you can give it a try. If you decide to build something, let us know. We'd love to see it. After all, this is a newer system that you could try out. And if there's something that you build and you're proud of it, just let us know in the same feedback channels. With that, I am going to close out community office hours for today. Thank you, Christopher, for joining us and showing us how the event system works and answering all of our questions. Stay tuned for the next community office hours. I'm not sure when it will be, but check back on our YouTube channel page for the next live streamed community office hours. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.